maybe everyone do a quick introduction of yourself and your company. Don't take too much time. I will interrupt you. You want to start?
Sure. Skyler Shuford, one of the co-founders and president of Hermeus. So if you don't know, Hermeus is looking to operationalize hypersonics. So taking the technology that's existed since the 50s and 60s and rolling it into actual useful products. Along the way, we're building fast planes fast. So not going to jump out and try to build a hypersonic aircraft right out the gates, but really incrementally de-risk the tech by building products along the way, subsonic, supersonic, and then up to hypersonic.
Hey everyone, let's see if this works. Nikhil Goel, Chief Commercial Officer at Archer. We're building electric air taxis for both commercial purposes, so think JFK to Manhattan, as well as military through an exclusive partnership with Anduril. So excited to chat more.
Hey guys, my name's Will Edwards. I'm the founder and CEO at Firehawk. We're based in Dallas, Texas. Really, we're a materials and energetics company. We've created a propellant that allows us to produce rocket propellant in about 6 to 12 hours as opposed to 15 to 60 days. So our first focus is solid rocket motors right now, but we are also making chassis for exploding drones, exploding anything. And if you ever want to come see rocket propellant printed and then blown up, come by our place in Dallas.
My name is Naweed Tahmas. I started a company called Aeon. We build advanced tactical weapon systems for warfighters on the ground, designed to replace all the unguided rockets that special forces and army infantry have to use by giving them a lower weight system that's easy to carry, that they could mount onto different platforms and fire from an ATAC, and give them those precision capabilities that they don't have today at a lighter weight and easier to carry system.
Okay. So I always say that I would not wish starting a hard, deep tech company on my worst enemy because it is the absolute worst thing in the entire world. Why are you guys so stupid? Why'd you start the companies? You want to start, Skyler?
I definitely feel, pretty dumb just because of how challenging everything is. I think the reason why that we're all here is because we see like how much opportunity there is. It's like something I consistently say, which is like pretty depressing actually, is just like everyone is bad. But actually it's just like there's just so much potential for us to be able to like improve the way that things get done. But what that means is you have to fight every single day to disassemble the way that it is done and fight and fight and fight and fight. And so I think that's the part that it takes thick skin and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time to be able to say, hey, do you realize that this thing that has been done for the last 30, 40, 50 years doesn't work anymore? And everyone says yes. And then you're like, oh, actually, now we need to, like, can we just do it this way? There's a legal pathway that we can do it this way. And then it's like, well, that's kind of different. It's like, And so I think that's the pain. But I think that's actually where the value is. And that's where the real moats truly are, is just like how much glass you can eat.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, I think, put it really well, where like, if I had known how hard flying cars would be, I probably would have chosen a different career path. But this all started roughly 10 years ago when I was at Uber, and we wrote a big white paper and started working on the electric VTOL technology. And we actually thought that by 2020 we would be able to start commercializing the tech. It's obviously 2025 and we're not quite there yet. But look, I think on a larger scale, there are very few moments in history, at least in aviation, where you can point to and say, hey, this technology is going to allow us to take a step change up. I think battery electric technology is one of those. And so we said, look, let's take advantage of that and see if we can change the world. So far, we're on path to hopefully getting to play a small part in that. And we're pretty close to the finish line.
Yeah, so starting a hardware company is really, really hard, especially if you're a finance grad from the University of Arkansas. So I was walking around all these conferences with my Lego plastic rocket fuel, and I was like, I can turn this into propellant one day. No one wanted to talk to me. For like 3 or 4 years, I was a weird Lego guy that never got anything done. However, I thought that ended up being a really good opportunity for me, because while everyone was used to working with thermoset polymers to make their rocket propellant, I was playing with Legos into my 20s and 30s, and it worked. We were able to create something where we can produce this propellant rapidly, that now we're working with a lot of people on it on some very serious systems. And honestly, it became a little bit of a spite thing, a little bit of a pettiness thing. Like I just wasn't going to quit because I knew that I could add to the industry. And it's just really exciting. I can't think of a cooler thing to do than change a core function of the industrial base and how they produce something and have it be done my way and work with other companies to make it successful. It's just fun too, so. Let's go ahead, Naweed.
So, some people don't know this, but I worked for Gabe for 3 years, and so I got to see him pull out all his hair, and his hair's going gray. They're looking much nicer now, but
Yeah, you lose weight, you lose, when you make money, you lose a ton of weight. It's great. And get taller.
But Gabe won't let me publicly call him my mentor until I hit $1 billion valuation. So the reason why I started this company was I grew up near Camp Pendleton, the largest military base on the West Coast. And what really frustrated and annoyed me was a lot of the guys on the ground were depending on unguided rockets, the equivalent of essentially bazookas. And the reason why they were using these systems was because they were lightweight, which as a soldier, you're carrying a lot on your back. And so you rather just carry, something like a lightweight NLAW or an AT-4. These are unguided rockets. And the reason why they didn't carry javelins as much, which is precision missiles, is because it was heavy, it was bulky, it was tough to carry. And so the idea I had was, what if we could get a system that's lightweight, but has the same precision capabilities, in fact, better precision capabilities than the Javelin, that's easier to use, that uses an ATAC, basically a cell phone, that you can mount somewhere and fire it remotely, that you could integrate onto drones, containers, booby trap it, and then make it modular so that you could swap payloads. So if you see enemy personnel on the field, you could swap out to an anti-personnel warhead, or if you see a tank, you could swap out to an anti-tank payload. But give them that capability to customize and carry something that's lighter weight. It's designed to just fit over their shoulders or carry in a sling. You could walk through doorways with it, which we were talking to a lot of warfighters. They were talking about how, it's hard to just walk through doorways on these heavy, bulky weapon systems. And so our approach to how we built this was, we literally have people, right now we're primarily working with special forces, Army infantrymen, and Marines, is we pull up CAD and we have them design that with us in real time. And then that same day, we come up with a launcher prototype. So this was one of our first prototypes that we put together. And this was something done, we did on the spot, 3D printed, went to Home Depot with these guys, and we built a launcher, let them hold it, see what they like, see what they don't like. But the reason why I started was because I grew up with these guys, and I saw that for over 30 years now, they didn't have the weapon systems they needed. And I was stupid enough to think that someone with no missile background could go do it.
Yes, you learned well from me. So I guess a really good question that I wanted to ask is, we established that having a hardware company is hard, right? How the heck do you raise money for, you're talking about a massive capital expenditure for all of your companies. How do you raise money? How do you tell the story? And then, of course, Will has a very famous investor who just came in. So maybe, Will, why don't you start and then...
Yeah, so, we're not looking for an insane amount of money. We probably have, I'm not going to say that. Every founder says we have one more round left in us, and then there's 6 more. But for us to get to scale, we're building out a facility now where we could produce about 1 million pounds of propellant a year. It's a significant increase. But again, since I went to the University of Arkansas and I was a finance grad and I was trying to create a defense company, I had people on the West Coast not interested because it was defense, people on the East Coast not interested because they're the big primes who have mastered their craft already, and they don't want to see someone come in and do a little bit more quickly, possibly more cost effectively. What we're seeing is much more cost effectively. So it was really hard. What I did is I built relationships with the people I wanted to be around, and I quickly learned I need to move to Texas. There's money. They are wildcatters. They're willing to dig holes into the ground and waste a fortune just to maybe find oil. And they're patriotic. So we raise a lot of money from family offices. We have Raytheon as an investor. But as Gabe was talking, we started to make more and more friends. And just recently, 1789, one of my board members, Joe, is in the crowd. He was just on stage. They just led our last round of funding, and they have Don Jr. as a general partner. So yeah, we just made good connections with the right people, and it paid off. So,
Nikhil, you want to do it?
Yeah. we're public, and so raising money is a little bit different for us. But we still have, we've raised about $2.5 billion over the last few years. It's been quite the journey. But this is also one of the great things about America is that, especially as a public company, I mean, you can go to Wall Street and in 3 days sort of raise a few $100 million.
Whoa.
I don't know anywhere else you can go do that.
Wait.
So I'll talk about the process a little bit. So it's funny because we have a number of competitors all over the world. Many of them were in Europe, and all of the European companies at this point have effectively gone bankrupt. And I think a large part of it was not because they had worse designs or worse teams or any of that. It was raising money in Europe's really, really difficult, especially in the sort of stuff that we do. In the US, there are two big companies that have raised roughly $2.5 to $3 billion, us and a company called Joby. And the reason, I think a large part of it is the tailwinds you get from companies like SpaceX and Tesla and Palantir and Anduril, where people look at these, deep tech companies, and yes, on the way up, it's really, really hard, and there's all sorts of technical risks and regulatory risks. I think once you have proven out a lot of the initial technologies, a lot of the investors actually look at it on the flip side and say, okay, the tech is here, and the regulatory piece that in the early days was a big risk is now your biggest moat. Because unlike a lot of the AI companies out there or the consumer companies out there, you can't just say, well, China could go replicate the same technology and beat you out with a lower price. No, you can't. If you're carrying human passengers in aircraft here in the United States, they're not going to be able to go get the same FAA certification that we will have spent billions of dollars trying to get. And so I think as a result of that, a lot of really quality investors like BlackRock, like Wellington, like the big sovereigns like Mubadala and IHC have been able to say, okay, we really believe in the technology. Let us go be a part of the journey, in addition to strategic folks like United and Stellantis. So we're in a fortunate position. A large part of that is also, in 2020, we were able to take advantage of the SPAC market. And we were one of the few that were able to go do that with a relatively small team, relatively nascent technology. And that was able to sort of put us public and get us to a place where we could raise from those folks.
Skyler.
Yeah, I think in the early days, fundraising was actually helped by having a kind of wildly ambitious, like crazy big swing. Because even if people were skeptical, to be like, all right, let's see what these jokers have to say. We can make fun of them when we're having beers afterwards. So being able to have that huge, huge swing in the early days got us in the room. And then what allowed us to actually like close some of the largest investors like Coastal Ventures in the early days was just having a plan that actually made sense. And so it was like pairing both the big swing with an incremental plan, and then just year after year, we just have to deliver things. So it's like we designed, built, and are ready to fly an airplane. We did that in a year, which is impossible. And so being able to do that, and we're not talking about like, an RC airplane. We're talking about a full jet-powered aircraft with the engine from an F5. Like, that's crazy. And so when you have something that's like that insane and that impossible, then it's like your customers start to pay attention. So the Air Force is like, oh shit, you guys can do that. Oh, can we swear? I don't know. Oops.
You betcha. It's a bunch of special forces guys here.
Okay, good. Yeah. So yeah, once you are able to demonstrate a timeline like that, yes, we still haven't flown. We're in the kind of the churn of the bureaucracy right now, waiting on the FAA. But like, once we get airborne, it's like regardless of how that first flight goes, designing and building and preparing an aircraft for flight in a year is just impossible. So being able to do things that are impossible, even though they're actually not, just by rethinking the approach and rethinking the problem, is how you reinforce that, and then you just compound it again and again and again and again. That's at least worked for us.
So, Naveed, before you go, Naveed had the hottest venture round ever a couple years ago. And I said, I'm your mentor. I love you. You're the greatest guy in the entire world. I'd love to write you a check. And he's like, oh, that'd be great. And then a week later, I go back and like, how much money do you want? And he's like, oh, the round is filled, and then carved me down. So what's it like to raise money, Naveed?
First of all,
By the way, completely not my experience, too.
fake news, not true. And both Gabe and Will are investors in our company. Joe from 1789 is also an investor in our company. I think we had a really compelling narrative and story when we started the company. You saw there was a lot of countries, including the US, that were waiting on tactical missile systems, but they're waiting 10, 15 years because there's only a single or two suppliers in the industry. And it was a simple and easy to understand supply-demand issue, where you had countries across the world that are waiting 10, 15 years for their deliveries of like Javelin missiles and other systems. And if you could build something that's more affordable, that's better, and that's designed for scale on day one, you could really take a sizable chunk of the market. And so I think investors saw that pretty quickly.
My next question has to do with rules and regulations. So the company I founded famously launched a satellite without a license, and Hal Lambert, who was here, was at the FCC commissioner's office pounding on the desk, give him a fucking license. And they wound up giving us one. But the regulatory authority that gave me so much consternation was doged on Friday.
Nice.
So you email them, and it's like, no one works here anymore. So I win.
They
And I
can't
want to
find
know,
you
I win. So I want to know what the regulatory environment has been like, especially for you, Nikhil. You want to start? I mean, it's probably a nightmare, but I want to hear everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in the last several years, it's been slow. It's interesting, right? Because if you work for the FAA, the folks at the top are all super supportive. They're all like, look, we want to see this happen. But the FAA's got like 20,000 people plus. And so if you're just sort of, somebody that goes and works for the FAA, you don't have much incentive today to go certify companies faster. That's just not part of how they're structured. And so as a result, a lot of the work we've done is internationally, outside of the US. So places like Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia who have said, look, we'll certify you to carry passengers this year. And so that's been the bulk of my team's effort, where we've spent time outside of the US, which is a bummer because it's American talent, it's American money that serves the American military. Now, what I will say is this new administration has been very receptive. On Monday I was in DC, we met with the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, and other folks in the administration who all said, look, we want to help the tech stay in America and launch in America first. So I'm not counting America out yet. And I think that there's a pathway to do something here sooner rather than later.
And I think, what you said earlier about it being a moat, the rules and regulations, it's one of the best moats you can have if you have a functioning technology.
Yeah.
You have to earn the right to do business with the government. Yours is much more complex, which I'm glad for it to be a little more complex, and you earn that right. But, with us, we're blowing things up. We're shooting things off of soldiers' shoulders. Once we get everything in place, and once we had everything in place, it opened a lot of doors for us, and it did become a moat. The government knows we're a serious company that wants to behave like a serious company. We build things with a well thought out process, and we test them. And that's very important for your own employees, for the end users. So while it is a pain in the butt and it makes me sad a lot of the times, I'm very happy when we get through it. But a lot of things can still be doged. I'm not lobbying for more government authority on that.
Fingers crossed. Skyler, I want to hit it, and we'll have Naweed go last because he's the worst.
Because I'm brown.
I'm not touching that one. Yeah, I think there's two big things that come to mind, which is I think most people think about risk wrong, and it's really about the value proposition of any of these regulatory agencies is to assess and handle and mitigate risk. I think when you start to get too equational or too mathematical with it, you start to get false precision. You're like, if I get these decimals to 0, 10 to the minus 8, then it's safe. And it's well, you can make the math say that, and then this thing still be risky if you have common mode failures or if you have these other sort of implementations of risk. And so you really just have to think about it like a person, not like an equation. And so I think that is a skill set that I think we've sort of lost as a country, not just within the FAA, but just in any sort of regulation. It's assess risk from a systems perspective and actually understand what are the causes of risks and how they interact and how you think about redundancy and everything like that. So I think that there's a place there for the country to get a lot better at. I think the other piece here is the pathways to getting your new thing through. So everything I've seen, even on the classified side, on the regulatory side, there are mechanisms to do new things. those were built into the processes. And it's actually like the processes are actually well aligned with new entrants and new companies. It's the people who have to carry the water. It's the people who have to shepherd them through that have 0 reps at doing that. And I think that's where the challenge is like when you have 0 reps at something, there's so many barriers to you, even just psychologically, to being able to do it. So the question is like, how do we give people the like psychological safety to actually say, hey, there is a mechanism here, and I'm going to be the shepherd that takes it through so I don't get my head cut off. So then it ends up being, it's just like, well, who's their boss? And then you just go, who's their boss, all the way up, and then eventually you talk to SecDef, and that's kind of where we get. But like, it's really about creating, it's letting the people do the things that they have the power to do. And it's not saying like, oh, let's ignore risk, let's be more risk forward. It's actually like, let's be more risk focused. Let's talk about risk more. Let's understand risk more rather than just like checking the box.
Okay, Naveed.
It is incredibly painful to be a missile company. Every single aspect of what we do is regulated. And I think what really helps to get past those regulations is, one, obviously building trust. But two, it's a relationship game, right? There's always like one bureaucrat that's like sitting on your piece of paper or your paperwork or that license you need. And you got to find his best friend and have him consult and push it through. That's, one of the biggest things for us has been building these right relationships to push through the things that we need approved. But I think with the new administration, especially with the new DoD secretary, he's all about lethality and making it easier to field advanced new weapon systems. China's not spending 10, 20 years going through certification or qualification. They build their weapons, they test them, and then they're out in the field. Versus the system in the US is, there's only a few places really to get certified or to test your weapon systems. And there's like a 2-year at least backlog, and you have to go through a very lengthy, long process with board reviews at every step. And there's better ways of doing it. And so I think this new admin is very focused on allowing companies to build highly advanced systems and then getting them out the door as fast as possible, instead of waiting 10 years, and by the time they go through that qualification regulatory process, now it's outdated.
So the name of the panel is In the Den of the Primes. So you've all worked with prime contractors. There's these huge companies that are
I
monstrosities.
love Lockheed.
You got to say that, but you have to say you love Boeing or they'll kill you. But I think I would like to. So you got the meme. What has it been like for you? Partner, kill, fuck. What's happening with the primes?
They are more bureaucratic than the government.
I agree.
It is harder to get through like an IRAD contract or a relationship built with a prime who has quite a big like backlog and balance than it is to get money from the United States government. I love the primes. Like, listen, at the end of the day, the primes build the best products out there. No startup is going to go out there and build a brand new aircraft carrier or something like that. What they build is awesome, but also at the same time, it's way too expensive. They love cost plus contracts, and it's disgusting. It's like as expensive as something can be, as long as it can take to build it, make that happen. If you're going too fast, stop. And so sometimes when like Firehawk is talking about what we're doing, one, the guys have been working at that company, which they'll just write us off immediately because they've been there for 3 decades, and they're like, that's not how we did it in the 80s, and that's how we're still doing it. But two, when we say, yeah, this could save money and make you produce something faster, they're like, whoa, that's going to cut into our margins. So we don't like that because it'll save money for the government. But then when we get to the sort of the other end users, like some of our partners, they do need rocket propellant and rocket motors more quickly, more efficiently. But I don't know. The primes are great. They have fantastic people in there. But they're characters, I guess. That's just what I'll say. I'll stop. My wife is looking at me, so I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah.
Raytheon's
Wife's,
an audience.
wait, I want to say Will's wife is very beautiful and prettier than him. Do you want to talk about Raytheon at all? Or can you?
Me?
Yeah.
Talk about Raytheon?
Yes.
Yeah, so Raytheon Missiles and Defense was one of our first investments. Like, did our Series A. It was pushed by Wes Kremer, who's fantastic. I really enjoyed that team. And we have contracts with them. They've done a lot of mergers ever since. But listen, everyone needs rocket motors right now and rocket propellant. So we're enjoying our time with Raytheon.
Naveed, how are you feeling about your love affair with Lockheed Martin?
I love Lockheed. We're not competitors with them. We're focused on a gap that is unmet right now. You have Lockheed's really good at working on the Javelin. That's their system. We are one step before the Javelin, where you have the unguided rockets and you got your Javelin, but there's nothing in the middle between those two. So Raytheon, Lockheed, they're all our friends.
So, okay, airline companies, I guess, is equivalent of a prime. Well, I guess you have Boeing, too.
On the
Jesus.
defense side of things, I mean, we've talked to Lockheed forever. We know Sikorsky really well. To Will's point, I mean, it's one of the most impressive companies on earth. I mean, they build literally helicopters that are as big as school buses. It's crazy. But I think Anduril in particular is starting to sort of break the mold and has demonstrated that you don't have to be a prime to win real government business. Now, they're not building aircraft carriers, but they're building some pretty cool shit. So that's our primary partner on the Archer defense side. But then similarly on the commercial side, we see the airlines as our partners. Our primes are really Boeing and Airbus. Both Boeing and Airbus have spent a lot of money trying to build electric VTOL and flying taxis. Both of them are relatively out of the game. Boeing's got a small division that focuses on autonomy, but really it's the upstarts that are taking control of the electric taxi stuff now. And so it's kind of fun to watch and see, Anduril on the defense side, Archer on the commercial side really start to enter the mainstream here.
So, yeah, can Boeing keep a door on an airplane? What's happening?
Well, I don't want to speak to Boeing. I don't know anything about Boeing. I will say, though, that
Stay alive.
watching some of the congressional committees was pretty rough. I'll just say that. That was pretty embarrassing of the accountability, at least in my opinion. But I do think that there is a place for different aspects of different primes. So it's really about, I think it comes down to reps. It's where is the place where there are, reps and incentives. It's where are the place where you're actually getting reps at delivering a product, and where's the place where there's actually competition to where it's not just more and more fat build up over time. So for us, our next aircraft that we're building right now is a supersonic aircraft. It's powered by the Pratt & Whitney F100. Pratt & Whitney is a very reputable prime, but having that as a partnership is huge. It's they developed that engine decades ago, and it's still an elite world-class engine. And so being able to have something that's in production, that has its supply chain, that we can take that and then take it to the bank and trust it, that level of trust is key. Now, when we're talking about absolute clean sheet development, I think this country is horrible at it. And that's why we think that we have an opportunity is there are no real places where you can rapidly develop something of the complexity of an airplane right now. And that's where we come in, and we have to rebuild the talent pool, rebuild the approach, rebuild the processes, rebuild the regulatory pipelines for all of that. But there is absolutely a place for things that exist from the primes, unless we start incentivizing the primes to move fast. And I think the only way that actually happens is by competitors coming in and just blowing their pants off.
Well, how do you think about cost plus contracting? If you can do firm fixed price, where it's I have a product, you buy the product, like every other thing, or you have the prime contractor's here's it's unlimited money, and if you fuck up the contract, you get more unlimited money. So how are you all thinking about that? I'll let you.
That sounds like a great grift.
It's a great grift. It's the best.
Yeah, the incentives are supremely misaligned there. Our CEO AJ Pipica had a take that was have as much profit as you want during peacetime, and then zero profits during wartime. And so that actually is an interesting kind of structure for defense contracting. I doubt it will actually happen, but it is an interesting kind of thought experiment where it's it's incentivizing you to be as efficient and as commercialized as possible when it is peacetime, because you're creating a deterrent, and then you make zero profits during wartime. So there's not this incentive to try to escalate issues. So it's actually incentivizing peace, which I think is pretty cool. But the cost plus thing, yeah, there are caps and everything. But I think to your point, it just it incentivizes time, right? It's if you're charging direct labor is your time metric. It's not just your CapEx, it's your OpEx. So it's as long as you can run the OpEx, you just run it out, and there's no incentive pulling you back.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah. Well, I think the cost plus gives startups a really good opportunity, because that's where you could shine and show your advantages over a prime, for example. That's where you could have speed, cost efficiency, and also leverage other things like special relationships that maybe primes don't have either. So for us, it's a great opportunity that we have the ability to be a firm fixed price company where you don't have to wait long, development timelines, and you just build something, use your own IRAD, and just get it out the door, which I think is what the customer really wants.
He said something that like just makes me think of the old panel where they asked about like, is there a place for VCs in defense? Which yeah, there is. One thing where I think there's no place for VCs almost is in defense during a wartime, because one thing that's very, very common in this space is, yes, we need your money, but we need that VC software, Silicon Valley, kill everything at all costs attitude to die. It's pretty prevalent for someone to say, I invested in a competitor and then get everyone in the VC space not to invest into this one company because they want to see their markups. Now, VCs are incredible in this space. It's allowed for like new companies to exist, but dude, like that, what you just said, like you should not make profit in wartime. We want VCs to invest in the defense space, but we need partnerships across VCs. If you see another kind of competitor company, like I'm sure Joby drives you at Archer, Hermeus, you guys have a few other like great competitors in this space. We need to see these companies get funded, because just because someone's winning at the very early stage of their company's life cycle doesn't mean that they're not the next big thing, or the other guys aren't the next big thing down the road. So I just hope if you're a VC in this space, you don't trash talk another company because you invested in a competitor. We need multiples. That's just a rant I want.
Sounds like a very personal anecdote here.
It's so personal to me, you have no idea.
Who hurt you?
A lot of people.
A lot of people.
But it is personal to everyone. I mean, the reality is there can be 3 or 4 winners in every single sector. Like, there's so much money.
No one can build everything, and anyone who says we're going to build everything has not built everything. Probably hasn't gotten to full scale yet. Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop, they're all best friends at the end of the day.
Yeah, they have to work together.
Yeah, they work together great, and they give our soldiers the best stuff in the field. They don't have rusted out AK-47s.
So that goes to my next question, which is, can you guys talk a little bit about your companies and scrapping versus just valuation maxing and raising as much money as possible and, I don't know, getting a Porsche? Like, what do you see, what kind of company do you guys want to build? How long, what is the vision in terms of like raising money, dilution? Tell me about it.
I'll go fast because I'm not great at raising money. We've raised $100 million. Like, it's been great, and I have amazing investors. But like, my investors are like, I don't care about a markup. Like, you have to earn your next round. So, and that comes from people who are on my board. They're not raising their fund for just the next big markup that they can feel good about, and then maybe it trashes in 5 to 10 years. So we've never really thought about like how big and flashy can we get. I want to build a product that works and can sustain itself in 5 to 10 years and for a long time. And then maybe I can get fired and they bring in a real CEO, like if that's what they want to do. But we're going to get there. And
You're a real CEO.
Yeah, no, but anyways, I think I forgot the question. That's my rant.
That's fine.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm done
Anybody
talking.
else?
Oh, go ahead.
So, before Archer, I was at Uber for a long time. And so I've thought about that question a lot. And I think about, in the early days when it was sort of Uber versus Lyft head to head, why did Uber ultimately win out? And there's a bunch of reasons, and you could point to different things in the company's history. I personally think one of the biggest, if not the biggest, was Travis and Emil's ability to go raise a lot of capital. And the ability to go do that had this virtuous cycle on the rest of the business. We were able to subsidize rides at a steeper discount. We were able to pay drivers more. We were able to spread to other cities faster, both domestically and internationally. We were able to hire better talent because people felt, more credibility and sort of reliability in their equity. And all of that sort of fed back into the next week, and it sort of continued to compound until Uber was effectively out of reach. And it came back to like, okay, 2 guys were able to go make a better pitch on Sand Hill Road and ultimately raise more capital at higher valuations, and that fed into the rest of the business. Now, again, it's not the only reason Uber won. I personally think it was a big, big driver. And so at Archer, I think we're employing a lot of the same sort of rationales where when you've got a company that burns $1 million a day roughly, there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly in the early days, of if you're going to survive. So for us, it all comes down to survival. And when the stock market's treating us well, we want to be in a position to sort of save up for a rainy day, particularly when you've got regulators and countries and airlines and defense customers looking at you and saying, well, 5 years from now, are you still going to be around if the regulatory landscape takes longer than you think, if there are technical setbacks, et cetera? So we try to make sure to strike the right balance of making sure we've got a big enough sort of war chest while at the same time being dilution sensitive. And so right now we've got roughly over $1 billion of liquidity, and we try to stay at that sweet spot to, again, if the market takes a turn where we've got enough in the coffers for a while.
Yeah, I like what you were saying there about survival. For us, the way we kind of think about it is just all about time. It's like how do we buy ourselves more time to be able to do it? Because everything takes longer than you expect. Regulation takes a long time. Contracting takes a long time. Building airplanes typically takes a long time. And so it's really about converting equity into time. And so it's really how do we give ourselves the maximum amount of time for the least dilution. And so I think, higher and higher valuations for given scope definitely helps. But it really is just like, how do you just extend runway maximum extent possible so that you have optionality for the objectives that you have?
Gabe, I think it's a false dichotomy that it's either you could stay scrappy and that forces you to spend money better, or you could raise a lot of money and just burn through it and not get anything accomplished. I think there's a way where you could raise a lot of money and still spend it cost effectively.
Yeah.
But they're also
Well, that goes in the vision,
Yeah.
though.
there are defense companies out there doing $1.25 billion a year where they've never raised money.
Yeah.
They've never been on a TechCrunch article. They're just sitting in their facilities this size, twice this size, producing stuff.
Yeah.
So there's lots of routes, though, to extend runway by getting contracts and revenue as well. I just don't want to see the defense industry become a bubble like the space industry where we see $5 billion companies disappear overnight.
Yeah.
And that's going to be dangerous.
We might be there already.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always safe to say customers are better than investors, right? And I think that we've all learned that. So I have a question about President Trump and the new administration. So Naweed, you work for President Trump. I think you were the youngest ever director.
Special assistant to the president.
Special assistant to the president. I'm sorry.
Some respect on it.
And then you reduced yourself to work for me, which was great. I'm interested in what everyone's thinking what the next 4, possibly 12 years look like, regulatory-wise, raising money-wise, touching on everything that we've kind of talked about. Naweed, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, what he's been able to accomplish, what the admin's been able to accomplish this time around, compared to the beginning, is amazing. And I think what we're going to see is the lessening of regulations we talked about, the ease of working with the government, getting rid of a lot of the bloat that gives opportunities for startups to step in to provide something more cost effective, and just more of an open hand to the industry as well, startups and companies, to be able to work with the government a lot better. I mean, what they're trying to do, and it's, I talk to these guys all the time, is when Trump says he wants to create the new golden age, he's actually very serious about it. And a lot of the guys that are working for him understand that as well. And so they're trying to figure out how do we make it easier for these innovative companies to be successful. And the access compared to the previous administration and even other ones has been incredibly better than I've ever seen. And the talent now is even better as well. One of the reasons why I had such a hard time finding a job afterwards, having to be succumb to come work for you, was that first admin, you were basically blacklisted from everything. It was so hard to find a job. And it was even harder to recruit really good talent to come into that admin. This time around, it's completely changed. We have the best appointees coming in that, one, have come from the industry, have that real world experience. They're not just DC swamp creatures. And so they understand how to fix government and how to also work with good companies.
And like the defense cuts, sorry, go ahead if you want to add.
Well, I want to ask how many Cokes Donald Trump drinks a day.
I'll tell you, at the Resolute desk, he always has 2 Diet Cokes on either end.
Okay, that's a joke.
So everyone's always asking about defense spending cuts. Every single one of these companies our market is on a list essentially of companies that will not see any cuts. And so I'm excited for this administration because they're going to start removing a lot of the wasted spending and shepherding it to companies like Hermeus, Archer, Firehawk, Aeon, and Anduril. and the money's going to go, it's just going to be better used. So when you see defense spending, like my mom calls me and she's like, is Firehawk going to be okay? I'm like, yes, Mom, we're on the list. Our industry's on the list, so.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about this administration is they want to see America win. You know, one of the sayings I always use is, you know, America innovates, China replicates, and Europe regulates. And the middle part there around China has definitely been a scary one for a lot of us, where you see just about all the companies in our space literally in real time getting replicated in China, but then in a very deregulated environment where they can get certified and go to market and start making revenue and then start selling to other countries as well. So, you know, as an American company, you're in a tight place. And I think with this administration, they see that, they acknowledge it and say, look, we want America to win. And so I'm hoping that we're going to start to see some really cool things there where it's not just about, you know, regulation on a principled level, but really taking a commercial approach and saying, no, America's got to be number one when it comes to aviation and defense.
Yeah, I don't know if I care about the administration changes. Like, with what we're doing, like I'm convicted enough to think that our thesis is right, and it's like it doesn't matter what administration is doing, we're just gonna find a way through because we're so much cheaper and so much better and so much faster and all the metrics that matter. And so then it's just like, well, we're gonna deal with what is presented with us. So it's like one thing that we've been facing is like with a lot of the executive orders, especially on the FAA side, is it causes a lot of churn within the people who have to push our paperwork through. And so it's like, yes, well, in the long term, clearing regulation sounds great, and I like that, but it's also like, it's adding friction now. And so regardless, it's just, we just have to be adept at handling the confusion and the chaos and the changes, and whatever happens, we'll just deal with it and push through.
Well, I would like to thank our panelists for an exciting panel. Will didn't yell at anybody, so I'm
Success.
disappointed.
I took my medicine.
We had a great moderator. Thank you, Gabe.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.